Well, happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to another Office Hours here on Hosting.com's Agency Success. My name is Nathan Ingram, and every Thursday you get to pop into my virtual office here, and we'll talk about whatever you would like to talk about. Questions are open. Looks like we have 4 questions in the list today, and if you have a question you would like to ask, there is plenty of space for you to do so. The link to do that is there in the chat. But as always, we're going to get started with our weekly brief. If you'd like to download this slide deck, that link is also waiting on you in the chat. Here we go. So, several things to talk about this week. If you are an agency type person doing WordPressy things with clients, several things happening. So, let's talk a bit. First, in the ever looming saga of WP Engine versus Automatic and Matt Mullenweg. A few things have happened. No real major changes other than to say that the magistrate is really questioning why in the world that certain items which were clearly in existence did not get turned over during the discovery phase. The judge found that WP Engine plausibly contends that certain relevant documents were deleted, which is a problem. So we're 18 months in, 273 items on the docket in this case. This is going to go on forever and ever and ever. Now, I will say, and let me just check in with you folks in the chat. When all this first started happening, had a couple of clients ask, hey, what's up with, all this kerfluffle in the WordPress world? Just a couple of them that read tech news asked. I haven't heard anything from any clients about this at all. Have you? I would love to hear it in the chat. Just yes or no. And I'm glad that I'm not hearing anything because this is bad for business. It just is. And so hopefully this is just, passed along until some major earth-shattering thing happens, like a verdict or whatever. Yeah, but we're years likely on this. It's crazy. All right. So anyway, let's move right along, shall we? Speaking of Matt Mullenweg, we talked a little bit last week about the initiative that Matt brought into Automatic about, hey, let's just create some teams that have power to build some things quickly without having to go through the normal tiers of corporate whatever. And Automatic built some cool things. So Matt has now transitioned that idea over to the WordPress core teams. And so he created a private channel called Meta Janitors in the WordPress Slack a few weeks ago and handpicked a group of 12 contributors and gave them the authority to basically change WordPress.org without any going through all the processes of the normal teams and committees and so forth. He was the only one that had to approve it. So pausing for a minute, I'm not sure that's not a bad idea, to be honest. Like there's some times where organizations and structures get in the way of actual progress, and maybe it's good from now and then to, let's get some stuff done already. So he told the group they could override anyone in WordPress.org, including each other, anyone except for me, he said. So the channel has grown to 32 members since, and they've already shipped several different things. So let me show you what they've built. So they built this new page for WP CLI, which is kind of cool looking. I like that. They've built a new job board for WordPress that has kind of LinkedIn-y feel for job post, job availability. That's kind of cool. They have also built a new 5 for the future page. So they built some things. And I say good, I think. With great power comes great responsibility. Class says move fast and break things. Yeah, it's so hard to decide here because let's face it, I think we can all see evidence that the WordPress project does get really sluggish. But that's the downside of building by committee, which is what also is the strength of open source software. It's a hard thing to do, and I am not bothered by the fact that Matt has commissioned this team to go make some things happen. So there you have it. We'll see what else they do. And I fully reserve the right to change my opinion on this, depending on what's actually built and or broken in the process. All right. So Austin Ginder is the founder of Anchor Hosting and works with, he's really kind of rolled into a plugin security review role. He's really been focusing on the WordPress.org supply chain, and he has been flagging plugins like with great success. The latest one called Scroll to Top, which maybe you used back in the day before themes started including a scroll to the top button as part of the thing. And so he's noting plugins that share a certain feature, and that is they're a dormant plugin, like this scroll to top plugin hadn't been touched in forever. And somebody took over ownership of it, and that's a thing. Like you can sell a plugin or you can just let somebody take over your plugin, and they have access to the plugin in the repo and they can put stuff in there in the plugin and oftentimes bypass some of the normal checks that would happen by the WordPress plugin team. And so he has now launched this service called WP Beacon that's monitoring every WordPress.org's plugin author, committer, and releases to flag these ownership transfers and let people know that this is a thing. So this is pretty interesting. This is wpbeacon.io. This is one to, don't spend the rest of your day looking at this or anything, but this is an interesting site that's kind of giving some statistics. Here's some active plugin hijacks that are going along. Who the authors of WordPress are. It's basically a spot to flag some of these authorship changes that could be an indicator of a coming supply chain issue. Certainly, most of them will not be, but it's interesting work. So good for Austin. Here, this one's a little scarier. This is a story in the repository. How many of you, I think we actually did this plugin, you may remember years ago on the plugin roundup, it was called Quick Page Post Redirect, and it basically put a little custom field in a meta box on the side of your page or post, and the post was there, but now you want to redirect it to somewhere else, you just drop in the URL and it works. Like it's per page or per post, and it's a quick way to redirect content. Well, turns out that 70,000 active installations later, the author, now this is not a takeover situation like the previous story was. This is the actual author from wherever ago, has been secretly running a server for 5 years where he was able to inject code into the plugin. So the private update channel let the author push code directly to all 70,000 sites without any WordPress.org vetting, which is the exact thing that the plugins team is trying to deal with. So this is a big deal, and it's part of this bigger problem that we need to be aware of in WordPress of continuing a growth and continuance of WordPress supply chain attacks. Supply chain meaning we get our themes and plugins from somewhere, and most of us may not even fully understand how that process works other than you click update in the browser. But we're basically giving people the right to install code on the website. And so it would behoove us to have very good practices on what plugins actually get installed on our sites. And it just goes back to that big overarching principle of choose your plugins and your themes carefully. It needs to be reliable themes and plugins from authors that, have some track record. So this is kind of scary. And they are thankfully flagging these things more and more, but it's a thing. We talked last week or the week before about this, we'll use the word unfortunate bug in WooCommerce subscriptions that it was just not charging people and then not telling you it didn't charge people. So we talked about how this developer publicly disclosed 4 bugs that silently broke auto renewals for WooCommerce subscriptions plugins. So WooCommerce has now shipped a tool to help reveal that, which subscriptions in your store are affected by this. So that's good and helpful. The WooCommerce team also acknowledged that changelog entries for 3 of the 4 bugs that this developer disclosed failed to alert merchants of they kind of talked about some stuff in technical jargon, but they didn't say, hey, you might not be collecting money like you thought you were, which is really the issue. So they called that a process gap, and they've made a commitment to better impact assessment, etc. So that is a meaningful shift in the acknowledging this and how WooCommerce communicates. So we'll see if that actually happens going on, but at least they've given a tool to fix the problem. So there you go. And if you're not aware of this, and if you haven't heard this issue yet, if you or one of your clients is using the official WooCommerce subscriptions plugin, there is a chance that you've got subscriptions that look like they've renewed and the people still have access, but they haven't actually paid. And so this plugin will help reveal that. So if you're running WooCommerce subscriptions, you need to dig into this issue because it's a thing. Meanwhile, at Automatic, they have launched a tool called Studio Code, which is an AI coding agent that is built on Claude code. So this is pretty cool, and it's worth taking a look at. WordPress Studio is a local development environment that's really more, it'll connect to WordPress.com, but you can still do things with it for self-hosted WordPress. And Studio Code is a command line interface tool that will let you do WordPress things with Claude right there on your desktop. And it's pretty cool. So if you are at all into CLI, for one thing, terminal type interaction with AI and various things, this is definitely a tool to look at. That's pretty cool. It is free, and it works right in the existing WordPress Studio app, which you can download. They talk more about it here at this blog post. So it's a pretty neat little tool that you might want to consider tinkering around with a little bit if you're doing local development and you're using AI to do it. Here's another similar thing, this one with WordPress Playground. Now, Playground, you may know, is an in-browser tool to spin up a quick WordPress site, test a plugin, do various things. And recently, we just talked about this, I don't know, it's been within the last month or so, where plugin is now persistent. By that meaning, it used to be that when you closed the browser, everything you had was gone because it was stored in browser memory. They've now made Playground persistent so you can come back to an existing install. It still runs and lives right in the browser. It's really a neat setup. But now this has an MCP server, so you can connect your AI tool to it to, do tests and set up things. And yeah, it's really neat. So it runs entirely in the browser on your side of the world, doesn't require a web server out there. You don't have to have SSH keys. It just kind of works. This is worth playing with too. Again, if you haven't yet experimented with an MCP server in WordPress, and one of the first ones that I talked about weeks ago was called Nova Mira. Nova Mira has been a game changer for us in our work. It is remarkable the number of things you can do with a chat conversation with us with Claude and a WordPress site via Nova Mira. It's mind-blowing. It's a huge, massive step in our capability and what you're able to do. So anyway, play around with this. This is a good way. This Playground tool is a great way to just experience that the interaction between a WordPress site and a AI chat without getting into actually having to install something like Nova Mira on an actual site. This is pretty neat. So give that a little try if you have some time. Let's see. All right. I know several of you are Beaver Builder fans, as am I. Beaver Builder has created an AI tool. It's at create.beaverbuilder.ai, and it is on a public wait list. I have access to this, and I've played with it, and it's pretty darn good. So there's a great interview with Robbie McCullough, one of the founders of Beaver Builder, on Nathan Wrigley's WP Tavern podcast, where he talks about Beaver Builder and their team and their thinking with AI. And they deliberately waited for the first round of AI tools to pass, which really were just it's kind of flash in the pan type stuff. Like they were okay. I mean, but it wasn't really actual thorough building of a website, right? So And Robbie called it slapping a GPT wrapper on top of a builder, like some have done. This is a much more thorough way of integrating AI with Beaver Builder. And it's an interesting approach. Give it a try, especially if you're a Beaver Builder person. Go out and sign up for the wait list. I don't think you'll be waiting for super long, but they're just kind of trickling people into it to make sure the tool can sustain it. And this is a great interview. If you're a Beaver Builder person, listen to Robbie talking to Nathan over on WP Tavern. It's a really interesting story. Okie dokie. Okay. Do you use Microsoft Edge? If you do, I hope you're not saving your passwords in there. I hope you're not saving your passwords in any browser prompted, hey, would you like me to remember the password situation? But if you are doing that, and more importantly, if you are doing that in Microsoft Edge, you may want to go delete your passwords, because what Microsoft Edge does is that when you go to a place where it's going to pull like an autofill password in, it decrypts your entire password library, every single password that Edge has stored for you. It decrypts it in plain text, which means it's readable to, and now granted, yes, you have to have a computer that's compromised in order for somebody to read this. But yeah, it's just like, here you go. Here's all of the passwords that I've saved. Now, Chrome has a similar thing where it will remember passwords, but it only decrypts one password at a time on autofill. So Edge instead, as soon as the browser starts, it pulls the entire library of saved passwords into memory, which means that if you have some, vulnerability on your computer, or more importantly, if you're less tech savvy relative, and we all know who we're talking about here because we all have them, uses Edge and they're saving their passwords because maybe you even told them use a password manager. So they're using it every single time they go to a website, all their passwords are decrypted in memory. Now, the website from the outside can't see this is a local computer thing, but still, this is a terrible idea. And more importantly, Microsoft says this is by design. They meant to do this so that we can help our users sign in quickly and securely. And they note that this would require the device to be already compromised. Yeah, but that happens a lot. Anyway, all that to say, I don't know what to say. I scratched my bald head on this one because I don't know why a developer would choose to do this. But they did, which means if you have a relative using Microsoft Edge, you should probably make sure that their whole computer is secure. Anyway, not to be outdone, Google and Chrome have been silently stashing a 4 GB AI model on your device. Thank you to Elizabeth for sending this over to me earlier today. I read this and I thought, this cannot possibly be true, until I navigated through my file tree in Mac Finder and found, indeed, a 4.27 GB file sitting on my computer. It's called weights.bin. And it's tucked inside Google's, one of the Google folders. It's like 8 million layers deep in your file system. Researchers have traced this to what's called Gemini Nano, which is Google's on-device AI model. It helps with writing text, summarization, and scam and phishing detection in the browser. That's great and all, except I never told Google, like, if Google had, hey, would you like to download a 4 GB AI? No, I don't want you taking 4 GB of space on, come on. So the researcher says, look, there was no clear consent flow for this download, and Chrome's AI mode, which is what most people use, actually runs in the cloud. So Google told Android Authority the model is downloaded, so features that rely on these on-device models stay ready for use. Okay, so you can, in fact, opt out of it. Well, yes, you can, in fact, opt out of it. Let me show you right here in the settings page. You go to, if I can remember, it's System, and right here it is, in the Mac Chrome anyway. I toggled that off, and it deleted the 4 GB file, so far as I can tell. Now, On Mac, at least, it doesn't re-download. Some reports say that it did. I think maybe Google has changed this or something, but on mine, it has not re-downloaded even with a computer restart. So toggling this off actually did solve the problem. Like they don't need 4 GB on my computer, and I don't even use Google's AI model. So it's kind of like that time Apple downloaded the YouTube. Remember the YouTube song on everybody's iPods a million years ago? They did it to be nice, but people didn't want their storage being used for that. Anyway, if you want to take a look on your own computer, here's where it all lives. If you're on a Mac, it's library app, blah, 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 blah. On my computer, on my Mac, it did not have this default folder. It just went Chrome and opt guide on device model. On Windows, it's here. Or you can just go Chrome settings in the system like I did and toggle it off. For me, that deleted the file. For you, it may not. You may want to make sure if you don't want this on your computer that you just go delete it. So there you go. Thank you, Microsoft and Google, for all the things today. And that's it. Okay, let's talk about what's coming up here at hosting.com. We do have June live streams scheduled on the upcoming events page. Right here, slides. That's the deck if you want to download the deck. And here are our list of links. If you want to view this upcoming links, it's right there at that first one in the chat, upcoming.myagencysuccess.com. A couple of Cloudflare events coming up starting next week. So on Tuesday and then 2 Tuesdays from then, I'll be talking about Cloudflare, 2 1-hour live streams. The first on the basics of Cloudflare and kind of navigating your way around in the essentials. And the second on a little more optimization an advanced discussion on May the 26th. So if you've been hearing us talk about Cloudflare a lot here on Office Hours, this is going to give you good orientation and some strategy around how you might be able to use Cloudflare better to protect your websites or your clients' websites. Also, we've got our 2 June live streams scheduled as well. The first on June the 2nd, beyond the chatbot. So we've had a lot of Office Hours questions recently about different models of AI, and is there really a difference between the chat mode and some of the more advanced modes like Claude Cowork or Claude Code, that sort of thing. We're going to unpack all of that and talk about it on June the 2nd. And then on June the 23rd, we're going to use AI again to do a great content audit of our website. And so the takeaway from that one is going to be, you'll have a system that you can use to audit a client website. Maybe if you're going to do a rebuild or whatever, a whole system of, where the content gaps are, what should stay, what should go, and then how to build redirections at the end of it. So a lot of good stuff coming up here on these agency success live streams with hosting.com. All right, well, let's move to some questions, shall we? It looks like we have currently 5 questions in the list. And if you would like to ask a question, the link to do so is in the chat. Ben is asking a great question in the chat, which is, where do we send suggestions for plugin roundups now? Ben, you can use the Office Hours questions list and I'll get it. Just note it in there. I don't really have a better way to do that right now. But the next plugin roundup will be the first, I believe it's the first Tuesday of July. It's not officially scheduled yet, but it is coming at the beginning of July. All righty, so first up out of the gate is Ben B. Ben is not with us today. And Ben says, won't be on the Office Hours call tonight. With the epidemic of MCP connectors to Claude and other AI tools, do you think this is the year to build out workflows to replace Zapier? It's a great question, Ben. And the answer is really, how comfortable are you with Zapier? And how comfortable are you in working with a more advanced tool like maybe N8N, which is in many cases, it can be open source, no cost at all, N8N. So I haven't replaced Zapier yet. I have some workflows that depend on that, connecting one tool to the next. You probably could build MCP connectors, but then everything has to run through Claude. So I still think there's a place for some tool sitting out here someplace that's watching for a trigger and then doing something. And so Claude like you can do that with Claude routines. Like you can set up a routine in Claude to respond to a webhook or a file that's been added in a folder or that sort of thing. But really, a lot of that, it's like first generation routines. So I'm not ready to build a system around that yet. I'm still using a proven tool like Zapier for those things. Eventually, are those tools going to go away? I don't know. They're going to have to evolve. That's for sure. And a lot of these tools like Zapier have even added in where it can call out to an AI tool to get some feedback to then put in the stream of things and decide what to do next. That's pretty cool. So I don't think Zapier's dead, but yeah, I still think it has a place. It does in my workflows anyway. Great question. Alrighty, another question here it's a series of 3 questions. All right. So Ben is asking about using the Claude for Chrome extension. I'm assuming he means here. Uh, First question. This is about the Claude Chrome extension. Does anyone experience intermittent buffering on their Mac with the use of Claude extension? By buffering. Is there a delay? Yes. But I think that's just Claude doing its thing and then finally sending the command out, just like it sits there and crunches on things for a while. Uh, it depends on what you mean by buffering, Ben. We'll have to get some more clarity on that. If you've experienced this sort of thing, drop it in the chat if you know exactly what Ben is talking about here. But is there a pause? Yes, there can be a pause, and it does take some time to navigate down a screen because a lot of times it's taking a screenshot and uploading that and thinking about it and coming back and doing other things. So it's not lightning fast. And often when I'm using the Claude Chrome extension, I will navigate in the open browser tab to the spot where I know that it needs to see, just to save, a little bit of extra process. Is it something you should keep turning off and on? I don't, because I use it all day long for various things. Claude is always doing something in a Chrome tab, and so I don't turn it off. You certainly could. Claude won't open a Chrome unless you've given it reckless permissions, which I don't recommend. It won't just open a Chrome tab and go do something. It does always ask you to allow if it goes out into a tab. So I don't turn it off. 3, would a large amount of browser tabs plus the Claude extension cause intermittent buffering? So again, I think the buffering you're describing, Ben, is more just it takes Claude time to view the screen, and it's actually doing a screenshot and uploading and digesting the screenshot and coming back and doing something else. So it is a little slow, at least right now. And so will amount of browser tabs affect it? Well, yes, it could. If you have 8,000 browser tabs open, then the amount of free memory on your computer is going to drop, which affects the speed at which applications can operate. Obviously, if you have more free memory, things are a little snappier. But you would have to have a lot of browser tabs open. And the newer versions of Chrome are pretty good about pausing those things and not taking up a bunch of memory. So my guess is that what you're experiencing is just the normal delay of screen back to Claude, back to screen, back to Claude, which is kind of the status quo right now. It can take 20, 30 seconds sometimes for the next action to happen. Great questions there from Ben. If you have a question you'd like to ask, link is in the chat. Next up is Class. Hey, Class. All right. Class would like to know about website uptime monitoring. So Class is switching website management to main WP, and it includes uptime monitoring. But since that originates from my server, it wouldn't report the system being down. Yeah, exactly. So you're looking up third-party uptime monitoring services, which raises the question, what uptime monitoring service do you use? And how do you handle notifications? Okay, so Class, I'm going to answer your question directly, and then I'm going to give you what I think you actually should be doing. So the first is we use a tool called Better Uptime. It was an AppSumo deal a million years ago, and it's been quite good. They continue to improve it. We have 2 tiers of websites that we monitor, kind of the basic brochure type, where if it's down for a little bit, nobody's ever going to know. And then the more mission critical sites. And each of that, like Better Uptime, gives us an incident flow where it'll, ping the app or then call, and if nobody answers, then it does this. Like, so we have a whole flow of what happens when a site goes offline. Um, so better uptime is great. We use it because I got a lifetime deal. That's just the way it is. There are free uptime monitoring services depending on how many pings you need. And most of them that you do pay for are not very expensive. So the bigger issue here, class, is that you probably shouldn't be putting main WP on the server where the rest of your websites live. That could create problems. I don't think they recommend that. Most of the self-hosted tools like this want you to be on a separate box someplace. So for us, we use Infinite WP in our agency. I don't love it. I just have always had it, and I haven't chosen to replace it in our stack yet. So it lives and has for years in a little DigitalOcean droplet. It costs maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 bucks a month, maybe. So it lives over in its own little droplet in a DigitalOcean, whatever, outside in just the cloud. It's been there for 10 plus years. It works fine. Whatever, when you do these self-hosted things, it's better that they live someplace other than a server that it's going to communicate with. And so my recommendation to you, class, is, you could put it some other place, right, in an environment where it can be installed, and then, yeah, it can do the uptime monitoring for you. Yeah, my guess is that what you would pay for uptime monitoring is pretty close to what you'd pay to have this hosted on some place. So Doug has given us an AppSumo deal that's out there. I mean, I like a third-party tool for uptime monitoring, but bigger picture, I would have my main WP class someplace else. Does that make sense? Okay, so good options for uptime monitoring there for you, or the bigger move. Okay, great. Next up is TJ. Hey, TJ. And again, folks, if you have a question, we're down to the last three. So question link is in the chat. All right. TJ says, actually, I am not copying and pasting well today. There we go. TJ says, I have a potential client that I'll be meeting with next week who wants to see my work. Yeah. And I'm getting stuck on what to show and how to show it. For current projects, I have my own website that I could show them, and 2 in-progress projects that are not ready for prime time yet. This also brings up the question of AI and its impact on our transition from website builders to website consultants and how we bridge this transition. What are some things I can show or say to this prospective client to still communicate my value, worth, and expertise without necessarily showing them a portfolio of current completed website projects? Okay, so TJ, I would recommend that you show them some of the projects that you are proud of, that you've done work with. And okay, so your older work is from past employers. So that do you have any agreements in place with them, TJ, that you can't reference that work? Because if it's not explicitly stated, you can show that work. As I understand it, I'm not a lawyer. ... But I would still say that's something you can show to let people see that you are not just some guy, but you've done this work for a while. Yeah, so I think it's completely normal for a new potential client to want to see some of the work you've done. And so many folks here, we build a portfolio on our website of projects that we are proud of or whatever. It gets a little tricky though. Even if you have a big portfolio, somebody will look through there and they'll be like, well, you don't have any flower shop websites. I'm a flower shop. And that's not the point, right? It's like we're built, we can build whatever you need. So there are even downsides to having a portfolio online. But as you're meeting with them, I think it would make sense to come with, a handful of sites where you can show your work. Now, here's the trick though. Whenever we're unpacking the work that we do for clients, it's important. It's really not even the work itself. It's the process to get to the work itself. And this is how I like to position these conversations. So, I'll say, all right, this is what we built and this is why. Okay. Like you may not like that color blue, but we used it because of this reason. And we worked with the client to understand this. And so that's why we did that. Right. So design is a really hard thing to have a conversation about because it's very personalized. And the client may say, well, I don't like any of those designs, so I'm not going to hire you. And that's not the point. It's like these designs reflected the needs of this project and the preferences and branding of the companies we worked with. If you've got preferences in branding, we'll use yours to build your project to look just like you want it. These are projects that look like just what they wanted, right? So I don't know if that's helpful at all, but these are conversations that you have to develop a muscle to have those conversations. Um, you get used to it, right? And it's an important thing for clients to understand what the design process actually looks like. Like we're not just slapping a bunch of colors and fonts and like there's thought that goes behind each of these. And the most important thing is for them to leave that conversation with TJ can build whatever we want and something that's going to look right for our ideal client. And not that, well, he doesn't have any sites that we like. And of course, because they're not your site, right? Okay. Does that help at all, TJ? I would go with a handful of samples, but the conversation is not look at these samples. It's, hey, let's talk. Let me explain why this looks the way it does. Some of it could be, we built this beautiful site and look what the client did to it. I got a bunch of those. I don't know about the rest of y'all. I got a bunch of those sites. It was great when it launched. That's why you always get screenshots at the time of launch. Oh dear. Okay. All right, good. TJ, good luck. Hope it goes well. All right, next up is Davude. Hey, Davude. Again, if you have a question to ask, link is in the chat. We have this question and one more in the queue, and it's plenty of time. That's not the question. All right. Here's the question. Davude. Question about no follow and do follow links. If we have multiple links on a page to the same thing, say a product of our own site, would it hurt SEO to leave all of them as normal do follow links, or should we be adding the rel no follow to all except for one of them? Davude, you have asked a question that I do not know the answer to. My inclination is it doesn't matter. Okay, all of this, among many of the things that I'm not, one is an SEO professional. Okay. I have, however, been in that realm for quite a while, but I would never call myself an SEO like top tier consultant, whatever. Now, the issue here is, are we talking about 5 links or are we talking about 1,000 links? Right? So Davude is saying SEMrush is complaining that there are no follow links. What does that even mean? That's a good question, Davude. I don't know the answer. Like I would imagine that if you have a page and it's 2,000 words of copy and there are 1,000 links in it, that Google might look at it and say, that's awfully spammy. We're gonna downgrade that page. Well, clearly. But if it's 2,000 words of copy and there are 5 links, that's natural. I mean, we'll have 5 call to action buttons to the same thing down a page sometimes, right? So I think, what is reasonable is what I would say. And honestly, and here, okay, zooming out to the bigger picture here. Google for years, like their overarching thing is, look, just make the content usable for people, right? Just make the stuff that people are going to use. And if you build a page that's dog slow and it's got, garbage that pops in all over the place and moves the content around and makes it hard to use, or if you've got 8,000 links off to whatever spammy fill in the blank, we're not going to like that page because your users aren't going to like that page. And so if you have a page that just has some links to products or other places on your sites, I think that's normal. Now there are these plugins, right, that go and try to automatically link keywords, and so every page has, it's just like links after links after. I don't, I don't, I would imagine, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that Google would look at that and go, enough already. Like that's too many links. Just look at it as a reasonable human being and say, does this look spammy or does this look okay? And I think your gut feeling is probably going to be right there. Um, Doug is saying correctly that sometimes SEMrush just says some stuff. SEMrush comes out of the era of black hat SEO, where people were gray hat SEO, where people were doing weird little things behind the scenes that really would, at least for a little while, impact the rankings on Google. Google's way smarter than that now. I mean, they digest the whole page content. They even rewrite your page titles sometimes for people's search results, so it's more likely people will click your link. It's just Google's way smarter than all that stuff right now. So just use common sense and say, does this look spammy? Is it too many links or is it okay? And probably most of the time you're going to be fine. Does that help at all, David? People try to make SEO way more complicated than it really is in many cases. Any other texture on that one, David? Okay, I just wanted to see if I was off with what I was already telling your client. Nah, I think you're dead on. All right, and TJ mentioned in the chat that I completely forgot to answer the second part of his question, which is my gift. So here we go. The second part of TJ's question was, this also brings up the question of AI and its impact on transition from builders to consultants and how we bridge this. What are some things I can show or say to this prospective client to communicate your value, worth, and expertise without showing them? Okay, so let's talk about AI, shall we? We're all up in AI. And by that, I mean those of us who are geeks by nature, we're into AI, we're using AI, we're doing all these things. The average person is not really using AI at all, other than perhaps they'll use it like an exotic search engine or, whatever. The average person is not deep, deep, deep into AI like many of us are. Okay. And so they don't understand fully, at least at this point, what all it can do, what it can't do, and so forth. So our role, yeah, okay. This may be the opening of a soapbox bracket, okay? The soapbox tag is opened. If we look at what our role is in the client relationship, if you've done business correctly, and if you've built your business and your clients correctly, it's never really about websites. We build websites, but what we really do is we are solution consultants. I don't know, fill in your own made up term. But what we do is we listen to our clients and then we know enough stuff about tech to go make it happen, right? Sometimes that's web or email marketing or whatever it is. The role of the consultant is to stand between the end user client who just wants to go do their business and whatever this technology is that could meet their objective to bring them more business or to make their business easier or whatever it is. Our role is to stand in the gap and be the translator between the client and technology. Now, AI is making that role, like it's easier now for the end user to understand technology. But this role of the translator standing in between, I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, because there is value to this face-to-face trust relationship where we can talk through your problem and I can help navigate you through to the solution, some of which may involve AI. Some of it may be more counseling and coaching of, well, I understand this is hard. And a lot of my conversation with clients can sound like that. Yeah. Like this is tough. And this is, helping them, unpack some of their concerns as a business owner, and then helping to bring some technological solutions. So I don't know, close soapbox tag. Does that make sense? The role hasn't changed. The tools are changing. The tools will always change. But if you get clarity around your role as that consultant, that translator that can help people make sense of the technology that's out there, that role, if you get really good at it, is a great place to be. Sorry, I missed that a minute ago, TJ. All right, we are down to it's the final question. We have 10 minutes left. So if you have one more question you want to ask, please use the link in the chat. All right, I was developing my site on another host, which shall go unnamed, or at least quickly deleted and replaced. Um, and I got locked out of my site. My IP address got blocked. I could only get to the site using a VPN. Security had not been set up. I could not get to the site on multiple browsers or computers on my network. Everything else worked fine. Liquid Web says they cannot see any. See the other host says we don't want to call it. They cannot see anything wrong with curl or whatever. The site is now live. The issue is gone. I'm curious if you have any idea why this happened. Yeah, probably. It's probably CP Hulk, which is a big old thing in the background that's watching for what it thinks is abusive behavior. And it will lock out your IP address if it thinks you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. And so probably, it could be a number of things. Elizabeth, were you logging in at all? Did logins have anything to do with this? Or were you like I'm logged in, I'm building the site, and I got locked out? Editing. Okay. You may have logged in several times. Okay. So, I mean, did you have multiple tabs open? You're doing different things all at the same time? Because sometimes that can make CAP Hulk angry. You wouldn't like it when it's angry. Yeah. Okay. So probably that's what it was. It saw different things happening too often. Maybe it hit some sort of a rate limit and it said, nope, you're out. Go sit in the corner. And the reason it went away is because it times out after 15, 30 minutes or whatever timer it's set on. And so the way around this is to make sure that your host has whitelisted your IP address, or allow listed your IP address, the IPv4 and IPv6. Oh, it didn't time out over 2 days. Wow, that's interesting. So I don't know. That's a great question, but I would absolutely insist that my host get into that because their system locked you out. And that's the time where you don't take no for an answer and you just look, this happened and I don't want it to happen again. So let's get to the bottom of it. That is wild. I've never seen a timeout like that, like an IP address lock last that long. It could be that you throttled it so hard that it said, you're out for good. You are out of here, and put you on the permanent ban list. But even still, they should have been able to search the list and see, find your IP. Did they ask you for your IP address? There's often in many hosts, like in your user account, there's sometimes a way to add your own IP address to the allow list or scan the block list for your IP address. I don't know. Yeah, so it's weird. I guess it timed out on its own. They may have just had a very high block period, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. You hit the thresholds that somebody set and you got sent to the corner. Sorry about that. So the site went live and it was on the same server. The site went live. What did you see on the screen when it locked you out? You didn't get a screenshot, did you? Because a lot of times the tool that locked you out will leave a little something there so you can tell what it is. Yes, you got a screenshot. Or yes to something else. I don't know. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of times it will show you what it is. Stacy, thank you. Exactly. So if you get, put in the corner by Cloudflare, it'll show you the Ray ID at the bottom. And we actually demonstrated that a couple of office hours ago where you can copy that long, random Ray ID and search it in your security analytics. And it'll show you what flagged that block. But yeah, in this case, my guess is this was one of the server security features thought you were a bad person, Elizabeth, a very bad person, and put you over in the corner. That is the end of the list, everybody. One more quick ask for questions, or we will wind things up. All righty, folks. Well, let's land the plane. Hope you've had a great week. Hope you've picked up a couple of fun things to talk about today. And also, I hope you have a wonderful weekend and you don't do any work at all and you get to do something fun with your family and friends or whoever you want to spend that time with. I will be back with you on Tuesday to start talking about Cloudflare and unpack the basics of this incredibly powerful and free tool that can really help your security take a step up to the next level. So until then, we'll see you back here next week on Hosting.com's Agency Success, where we go further together.